He was on season 4 of Stand Up Asia on Comedy Central. His first ever 1 hour show was picked as one of the top 14 best free fringe shows at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. He's witty, he's cheeky, he's Sam C. Welcome to
Hi.
Inconvenient Questions, Sam.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So I'll get started. First straight question, just to understand a bit more about you. Why did you choose to go into comedy? Because as an insult comic, you would know that any self-respecting Singaporean, Asian, grade A student wouldn't want to choose that as their career path.
I don't
So
think
why
any
did you?
straight F student wants to pick it as a career path either. It's just fun. Before all this happened, I started out being like a good student in a respectable secondary school, had like single digits for O levels, and then after that, I veered off the course significantly. Went to video game programming in like a 28 point poly course, and then I veered off that course even more by doing stand up. So it's like I always felt like I've marched to the beat of my own drum, although that drum is significantly off key from everything else. But I'll just do what makes me happy.
I see. Interesting. So what exactly were you doing when you were in the computer programming space, and what really led you or pushed you into comedy?
I was doing a talent show at the time. I was doing I was that kind of performer. I was doing singing and comedy, and the singing was good. The comedy was terrible. And one of the other contestants were like, "Okay, you want to come to the open mic?" And I've never even heard of a stand-up comedy open mic. I was like, "Let's see the freaks and geeks." Went over there, and I was like, "Oh, I am significantly inadequate to do this job." I was like, "I'll give it a bash then." And I jumped up the next week, and I was terrible. And then it's just been a 8 to 9 year long career of trying to make up for that night.
I see. Interesting. So were you actually working full time at a company when you were
No, I
working?
wasn't. I was still in Polytechnic. I was in the last year of poly.
You're in the last year of poly while you were trying to do stand up.
Yes, yes.
I see. Interesting. And then what was the thing that really initiated you in the first place? What caused you to try it in the first for the first time when you were trying to do singing and also comedy?
There was a stage. It was free. There wasn't some sort of weird. You got to audition this process. You got to meet these people. Just if you want to go up, go up. And I was like, okay, easy barrier.
Ah,
The standards are low. The sort of like the barrier of entry is even lower. And guess what? My quality as a comedian was even lower than that. And yet here I am.
I see. So it's not common for Singaporeans to see a stage and look at it and go, look, I will fail, I'll fall flat on my face, but I want to be there.
Yeah.
So what is it that drove you in the first place?
A lack of intelligence mainly. Just pure stupidity. That's all I could say. I don't know, I just liked it. I guess I'm just an just attention seeking. Never got hugged enough as a kid, as I always say.
Oh man, I think you're thinking that this is a therapy session. We're clearly on the wrong
So
agenda here.
tell me why it's my parents' fault. I need this now. Tell me why.
So, was there anything in school, for example, that really exposed you to this kind of theater or any type of stage performance that kind of sparked this interest?
I'm in secondary school. I was involved in the drama club, but I wasn't really an on-stage talent. I was the prop manager slash like sort of chairman of it. So maybe that's why. Who knows?
So you looked at the stars from afar and you went,
Yeah.
"That's where I want to be."
I need this time. I need that stage. It's all of mine. Like that kind of thing. Just like
Interesting.
caressing a fake tree at the corner. It's like, yes, this will be me eventually. I'll kill you all. Yeah, and then eventually I just do jokes about my member to drunk white people every other night now.
That's a mark of success, if you ask me.
That's as PG as I could have made that. I hope you're glad. That's as PG as I could have made that sentence.
Interesting. So, since you've talked about that specific type of joke, we'll segue into a commonly asked question, which is, you're openly gay.
Mhm.
And I do want to know, how does being openly gay affect your comedy? Does it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think who you are is reflected in your comedy, and in the same way that a comedian who has to deal with being discriminated for being a woman or black will talk about it. I think being a comedian that is discriminated for being gay I'll definitely talk about it. It definitely crops into my set. I mean, my entire first hour is about it, so clearly there's I do moan a lot about it. So you can see it weave its way into my comedy like veins.
Mm. But specifically in the Singapore context, when you're performing for Singaporean audience and you don't know, which side they stand on, because this is still a contentious issue, what challenges do you face when doing this kind of comedy?
I mean, I would first of the bat, I'd like to say that most of our audiences in the comedy clubs and the shows I do have been very nice, very much more liberal-minded people, which is why they're at a comedy club out for drinks and having a good time instead of going home and watching Channel 5 and then trying to buy 4D as their ideal sense of income. But I would say that most of the time when I deal with much more homophobic or closed-minded audiences, I'm just like, it's okay, I'll win them over. I spent 8 to 9 years doing this. It's not my first time going to see an audience who like think I'm literally the devil. So it's just all about, okay, I know we'll get over the jokes you don't like. We'll get to the jokes that you guys like. If fine, we'll deal with y'all.
I see. So it's really about using your set as a segue, but also leaving it diverse enough. Is that kind of the sense?
Also, just working with people you hate. It's just part of growing up. Just gotta get used to it.
Hate and eventually would love in some ways.
Sure.
So I do want to ask a little bit also about, this sentiment that you have, because you've mentioned this in one of your interviews that you said too much gay jokes and people get a bit uncomfortable, like you said, and too little, I don't feel like I'm being myself. To what extent do you feel like this sentiment is true outside of comedy, that you have to kind of audit your gayness for people around you?
I don't feel like I really have to, because I've always felt like I'm in that weird in-between spot of like, I am effeminate to an extent. I do sort of demonstrate certain behaviors that would not seem cisgenderly straight to people, but I'm just like, you do what you want. I live in Toa Payoh. Everyone here is crazy. It's like, just live your life. Have the people here walking around screaming at a person playing on a harmonica. You just get used to it.
Right. You do think that in many senses of the word, beyond just the people and the audience in your comedy show, everybody in Singapore is getting a little bit more open to embracing all of these different people who may be not like themselves?
I think in the circle that we walk around in, which is a predominantly younger, more liberal-minded circle, I would say definitely so. But when you're looking at slightly older members of the Singapore community, it's still as close-minded as they always have been. It's not like they've changed. It's just that we are able to surround ourselves with a community that cares more, which is important. Some people might say that is putting yourself in an isolation bubble or just not trying to reach out to the other side. But when the other side wants to kill you and thinks that you're literally like a sin, it's a bit hard, to reach out to them.
Do you ever see your comedy being a tool to do that, to bridge that divide in some sense?
No, it's not my place to say it. It's no way is it my place to say my comedy is doing this and it's good. It's like, if it is, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. It's like I can't tell you how to read my text. It's like, you read, you tell me how you feel about it, and then I can go, okay, or I can tell you, nah, you're full of BS. It really depends.
Interesting. So actually, apart from entertainment then, is there any role that you intend your comedy to have?
Just hopefully making people laugh. Hopefully they don't hate me after, and they don't feel like they've wasted their time or their money. I think that's all any of us can ask for.
And I like that they are simple, they're straightforward. So specifically about the idea of, they don't hate you afterwards. Is there any time you feel like when you are doing comedy or you have to put on a performance, you're catering a lot to the audience rather than what you truly want to say?
Well, I'm a bit of a pleaser. I like to make sure people have a good time. And there are things I definitely want to say in the moment and all that, but sometimes it's like, I view as a performer, sometimes we do get a little bit selfish. We want to focus on us. We are the star. And I'm like, we're not here about the audience. So I want to make sure the audience are enjoying themselves. And once they're in the mood and they're having a good time, I'll sneak in my stuff. And by sneak in, I mean bash it through the door like a SWAT team invasion. Like I'm not exactly subtle at times. So it's like I think it's like a little bit for you, a little bit for me, a little bit for you, a little bit for me. Let's come to the middle ground.
Do you have an example that illustrates this point perfectly?
Just sneaking in a few sort of more how do you say, much more contentious stuff. Maybe I'll sneak in a bit of a 377A bashing. I might sneak in a bit like recent news that might be a bit more taboo. But then I'll just quickly sweep, like I'll say it, and then if people react, great. If they don't, quickly sweep it under the rug, move on to the next joke. That's the best and worst thing about comedy. They forget your last joke very quickly. So that means you're constantly trying to win their love, but you're not too worried about them memorizing every time you failed.
Interesting. Do you think that people who have performed before you, people like Kumar, Hosen, they've set that stage? Or do you think it's a different ball game we're playing now?
I think it's a different ball game we're playing. They definitely set the stage as performers, but in today's audience a little bit different. Like for myself, I cater a lot to the international audiences. I travel a lot. I perform more to outside Singapore, to non-Singaporeans. Whereas I would say, Hosen and Kumar definitely has rallied the home crowd together and make sure that the home team is entertained around the place. Like Hosen does a lot of stuff for Singapore Day, in New York, and I think he did one in London. So I think it's just different audiences.
Why do you perform for an international crowd rather than a Singapore crowd then?
I don't know. I just like to find more people I can make fun of or can entertain. I just want to find more people I can talk to.
Mm. Is there an extent that you feel that your position or your type of comedy doesn't seem to appeal to the Singaporean crowd necessarily?
I think there are certain topics that might not resonate with local audiences as well as it would resonate with international audiences. But the international audiences, they drink more alcohol, so they're a lot more fun to entertain. They get drunk, and then that gets fun.
So we talk a lot about your comedy, and we also want to link back to what the audience want to take away. We are talking now because of COVID, the idea of people upskilling jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think of comedy as a skill. I think you're skilled at comedy. So what is one kind of tip or useful tool that you can teach people comedy, or a skill that you can impart in the field of comedy to our audience?
Accept failure. Accept and embrace sucking. Accept that you're not going to always be the best, because once you're good, there's not much to learn. Once you're bad, that means you can find out things you can improve about yourself. You can find out ways you can be better at it. And don't be afraid to fail, because I feel with Singaporeans that try stand up, they get very scared about not doing well and looking like a fool. Like, you're gonna look like a fool. You already look like a damn fool. You're at a comedy club. Just accept that it's okay to fail and it's fine to look like an idiot. Just enjoy the ride.
Thank you. And with that, thank you so much for joining us at Inconvenient Questions, Sam. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.